A Russian prison transport stops at a rest stop for prisoners to relieve themselves. Prisoner 0864 cannot be found but is located behind a container. The transport soon arrives at a maximum security prison, and the new inmates are given a hearty welcome. Prisoner 0864 enters his cell to meet his intimidating cellmate but tells him he'll only be in for 3 days. Out in the yard, 2 prisoners try to intimidate him, but he shows extraordinary strength to overpower the men. This ruckus alerts the guards, who take him to meet the real boss, a prisoner named Seaman Chorny, a brutal gang leader and gun runner. 0864 introduces himself as Kraven, the hunter, before attacking Seaman's men and ultimately killing him with a tiger's tooth. Kraven breaks out of the prison displaying insane feats of speed and strength, leaping across rooftops. The prison deploys its guards, who open fire on him, but Kraven is too fast, eventually escaping into a massive snowstorm. He soon realizes he's being tracked by wolves but displays his killer instinct to keep them back. He gets to a chopper and removes his neck tattoo. While back at the prison, the guards come upon the real 0864 buried in the snow. 16 years earlier, a young Kraven, Sergei, and his brother Dmitry are picked up by their father Nikolai and learn that their mother has taken her own life and has passed away. Nikolai thinks she was weak, and she will not be honored with a funeral. Instead, he plans to take the boys hunting, stating that it will be good for them. Meanwhile, in Ghana, Calypso is playing with her grandmother's tarot cards and thinks they're just a game. Grandma, however, explains that the cards can see into the future. Calypso places 3 cards on the table and is told that there will be a terrible accident that will involve her. She is then given a healing potion, insisting that she will need it very soon. Sergei, Dmitry, and Nikolai are also hunting in Ghana. That night, the men hear a roar and wonder if it's the Zare, a massive lion, but Nikolai describes its roar as like thunder. He hasn't seen the beast but has witnessed the devastation it can cause. His dream, however, is to kill this legendary lion so that he can become a legend himself. The following day, Nikolai leads the men to hunt once more. One man, Alexei, approaches Nikolai proposing a partnership, but Nikolai thinks he's an insignificant man and has nothing to offer the Kravanovs. Sergei and Dmitry wander far from the group when they encounter the massive Zare. The lion doesn't attack, but when Nikolai shoots it, it launches at Sergei, mauling him brutally before dragging him away. Meanwhile, Calypso is sightseeing with her family holding the lion tarot card. She gets a feeling and wanders off when she encounters the Zare dragging a dying Sergei. Once it leaves, she pours the potion into his mouth, then calls for help. Sergei is airlifted to a hospital, but the doctors are unable to save his life. His body, however, begins to go through a change, and his eyes reopen to the shock of the doctor. Nikolai arrives and wants to take Sergei home right away, ignoring the doctor. At home, Sergei finds a letter from his mother begging him not to become like his father. Nikolai scolds Sergei for almost getting himself and Dmitry killed because he was afraid. He urges Sergei to rid himself of fear as he has plans to pass down his business. He has arranged for Dmitry to be sent to America and Sergei to stay by his side. He shows Sergei the head of the Zare, but Sergei thinks he should have died instead before storming away to his room. He is packing a few items when he stumbles upon the healing potion. He is sneaking out when he runs into Dmitry but tells him he cannot stay. Sergei hitches a ride on a cargo ship and soon ends up in Russia, where his mother had owned a sanctuary. He soon comes face to face with a herd of stampeding buffalo, but they all go around him, while the alpha male stands to confront him, eventually moving on. He arrives at the sanctuary, which is now run down and overgrown, where he discovers he now has super strength and speed. One day, he discovers poachers hunting on the land, having slaughtered many buffalo for just their horns. The poachers confront Sergei with guns, but Sergei picks up a blade and attacks the men, killing them. In the present, Kraven now hunts criminals. He gets back to his sanctuary, where he gets a call from Dmitry, who wants to see Kraven for his birthday. Another set of poachers ventures onto his land but is stopped by Kraven from leaving. They demand he move and try running him over, but Kraven attacks one of the trucks and takes out the men inside while the other truck escapes. The lead poacher returns to England to report to his boss, Mr. Tegeler, but is shocked to see Kraven sitting in his chair. Kraven has found Mr. Tegler's records of illegal activities and plans to add them to his hunt list before killing the poacher. We then see a grown Calypso, now a lawyer, attending the funeral of a friend who was killed by Chorney. Kraven tracks her down, and she doesn't recognize him at first until Kraven shows her the lion tarot. She wonders how he found her, and Kraven reveals he tracks people for a living. He apologizes for her loss, then reveals that he has taken care of Chorney. Later, Calypso sees news clippings of high-ranking criminals being taken out by the hunter. She meets with him the next day, revealing that killing Chorney is his way of saying, "Thank you," but Calypso reveals she is a lawyer. She wonders if Kraven is like his father, but he tells her he hates his father and has dedicated himself to ridding the world of people like him. He knows she is a very good lawyer but also represents some really bad people. He tells her about his list and proposes a partnership between them to help track down and take out criminals. Calypso wants to think about it and warns him that going after criminals could put people he cares about in danger. Alexei gets news that Chorney was killed by the hunter, but he doesn't believe the hunter is real. He learns there is a list of people which he probably is on and plans to track it down. Now that Chorney is dead, Alexei plans to take over his operations by force. He meets with Chorney's top 3 lieutenants at a power plant, proclaiming his takeover of Chorney's operations. The men mock Alexei for calling himself the Rhino, so he decides to teach them a lesson. One of the men opens fire on Alexei, who falls but stands to his feet nonchalantly and pulls the bullets from his now hardened body. A sniper then kills one of the lieutenants, leaving the other 2. Seeing Alexei's power, one lieutenant shoots the other as Alexei only needs 1 man. In Nikolai's club, Dmitri is playing the piano. Chorney's former lieutenant comes to meet with Nikolai, who is interested in becoming a business partner after Chorney's death. The lieutenant agrees right away, which makes Nikolai suspicious of him. Suddenly an assassin opens fire on Nikolai, who uses the lieutenant as a shield. There is a shootout between Nikolai's men and Alexei's assassins, and Dmitri hides under the piano. After the chaos, Nikolai is disappointed in his reaction, stating he needs fighters and not a piano player. Alexei gets news of the failed hit, but knows that Nikolai is a tough target. He then gets a video of Kraven escaping the Russian prison and realizes the hunter is actually Sergei. Alexei wants more proof and decides to activate his assassin called the Foreigner, who has a long-standing grudge against the hunter. We then see the Foreigner tracking Kraven at the prison. A guard comes upon him and demands he surrender himself, but the Foreigner uses ocular hypnosis to seemingly disappear, then reappear behind the guard, shooting him dead. Kraven arrives at an apartment complex and scales the side of the building. He enters the apartment stealthily, but it turns out to be Dmitri's apartment, and the 2 embrace. Dmitri wants to go out for his birthday and gets Kraven a suit. The 2 go for dinner, where Dmitri expresses his resentment with feeling helpless and wants respect from Nikolai. At that moment, Nikolai enters, greeting a reserved Kraven with a handshake. Nikolai makes a toast to his family, hoping to get everyone back together again. Afterwards, Kraven brings a drunk Dmitri to his room. Dmitri thinks Kraven shows up for his birthday every year because he feels guilty for leaving Nikolai but has forgiven him. That night Kraven is unable to sleep inside, so he goes to sleep in the woods under the stars. He returns to Dmitri's apartment the next morning, only to see a mess and no sign of Dmitri. He runs to the balcony to see men forcing Dmitri into a van. He launches himself from the balcony and begins chasing after the van on foot. He manages to body slam the van before jumping onto it. He tries breaking inside, even almost ripping off one of the doors, but eventually gets thrown from the van. The men transport Dmitri to a helicopter, but Kraven turns up and uses a net to trap the helicopter to the ground. The men open fire, but he manages to spear the shooter. The helicopter pulls free, but Kraven grabs onto the net and gets pulled through water. He tries to hang on but eventually loses his grip and his brother. He turns up at Calypso's office, wanting her help to track down the men who took his brother. He describes one guy with a scar under his eye, and Calypso decides to help him out. While Calypso makes her phone calls, Kraven goes to see Nikolai, who reveals the kidnappers have contacted him. Nikolai shows Kraven Dmitri's severed finger, adding that the ransom is $20 million, but does not intend to pay as it would make him look weak. Kraven explains that if Dmitri dies, his blood is on Nikolai's hands, but Nikolai reminds him he abandoned Dmitri. Nikolai thinks Dmitri will die whether he pays or not, but Kraven refuses to accept this. Calypso meets with a contact and gets the name of the kidnapper as Amir and his location. She leaves, and the man goes to meet with the foreigner, confirming his task is done. The man wants his payment, but the Phantom kills him and reports to Alexei, who is leading Kraven into a trap. Kraven gets the name and location in Turkey and boards his plane. He infiltrates the large fortress, quietly taking out men along the way. He closely stalks two men, but his next attack is heard by Amir's men, who are ready. Kraven launches his attack on the men before hanging Amir out a window. At the same time, men on a nearby mountain fire an RPG, but Kraven escapes by falling to the ground. He demands to know who set him up and learns about the Rhino, but more rocks fall from the cliff, covering them both. Dmitri comes face to face with Alexei, who reminds him they met once many years ago. Dmitri wonders if his father has paid, but Alexei knew Nikolai would not have paid. It turns out Alexei's men were actually after Kraven but grabbed Dmitri when Kraven wasn't seen. Dmitri wonders why Sergei would be the target until Alexei shows him the video of Sergei breaking out of prison. Dmitri is still in disbelief, but Alexei thinks he didn't know his brother well. Alexei's men go to confirm Kraven's death, but he ambushes the men and takes them both out easily. He then takes a cell phone and contacts Calypso, revealing he was set up and warning her to watch her back. She sees men entering her office and hurriedly packs her things to leave. Alexei explains that he grew up a very sickly child and knew he would never get Nikolai's respect in his condition. After a few years, he found a doctor who was experimenting with super strength, but it left him with a side effect, the hardening of his skin and increased aggression. Alexei reattaches his medication and reverts. Alexei wants to take over Nikolai's territory and wants Dmitri as his partner, as the Kravenov name carries weight and he would get the respect he deserves. Dmitri agrees he doesn't want the respect, but refuses to betray his family. Alexei goes to shoot Dmitri but stops when he learns that two teams of men are not responding. They hear the ding of the elevator, and his men all stand ready, expecting Kraven, but it is the foreigner, who uses his ability to move past the men and appear beside Dmitri before anyone can notice but is only messing with Alexei. Calypso meets up with Kraven at his sanctuary, revealing that 3 of her sources have gone missing tracking the Rhino. Kraven is suddenly pounced upon by a leopard but manages to battle and eventually subdue it, then releases it without harm. The foreigner reveals he was already tracking Kraven before Alexei's call, as Kraven is the man who killed his mentor. He has tracked Kraven's location and plans to use Dmitri as bait to draw him out. At Kraven's sanctuary, Calypso sees his array of medicines and poisons, and he reveals he has been trying to recreate the serum she gave him as a child. He thinks it saved his life, but Calypso notes that it changed into something else. He wonders if she is able to get more but learns her grandmother died not long after. Alexei, the foreigner, and their men bring Dmitri to the plains just outside the sanctuary. He contacts Kraven, trying to broker a deal with him to become partners and overthrow their father, but Kraven has no intentions of negotiating. His men drive into the woods, unloading bear traps, net guns, and large rifles, and a team heads into the woods. The same leopard suddenly attacks the convoy, and Dmitri uses the distraction to make a run for it. Kraven begins attacking the forward team with the aid of some traps. Alexei hears the screams of his men then sends in a chopper, which begins to bomb the entire forest. Kraven outruns the bombs, but he is suddenly shot with the neurotoxin by the foreigner. He begins to have a mental breakdown, imagining spiders crawling over his body. The foreigner turns up, and Kraven tries attacking, but it's no use and he is shot again. The foreigner uses the chance to lay a beating on Kraven, who is slowly succumbing to the toxin. The foreigner is ready to finish him off, but Calypso shoots him with a crossbow before he can fire. She rushes to Kraven and saves his life with more of the healing serum she had hidden away. Alexei's men return to him with Dmitri, reporting that Kraven is dead. They are heading back in their convoy when Alexei notices a cloud of dust heading towards them. The herd of buffalo runs straight into the convoy, flipping vehicles, but Alexei activates his ability and transforms into Rhino. He faces off against Kraven, and the two begin to battle. Kraven tries attacking with his blades, but Rhino's skin is impenetrable, and he gets thrown around easily. Rhino eventually grabs Kraven by the neck, but Kraven stabs him in the area he receives his medication. Kraven then wraps a wire around him and throws it onto a passing buffalo, causing Rhino to get dragged and trampled. Kraven demands to know how his identity was found out, and a dying Rhino reveals it was Nikolai who gave him up. Nikolai is camping in the snowy wilderness when Kraven shows up. He confronts Nikolai for betraying him, but Nikolai reveals his real intention was to have Kraven kill Alexei, and Dmitri was his motivation. Now that Alexei is dead, Nikolai wants them to rule his massive empire, but Kraven walks away. He had always delayed taking out Nikolai due to him being his father, but now he has crossed the line. Kraven leaves, and Nikolai soon senses a bear advancing toward him. He goes for his gun, but Kraven has stolen all his ammunition, leaving him to be killed. 1 year later, Kraven turns up to visit Dmitri on his birthday. The two sit and talk, and Kraven realizes Dmitri has taken over Nikolai's empire. He doesn't want Dmitri to become like Nikolai, but Dmitri reminds him he is not much better as he is just another hunter searching for a trophy. Dmitri leaves, and Kraven follows, only to see Dmitri morph into him. He reveals he visited the same doctor as Alexei and has now gained the strength to get the respect he has desired. Kraven plans to stop him from becoming a villain, but Dmitri tells him to go home. He goes to his father's home, where he sees a note from his father and a jacket made from the skin of the Zare, and he puts it on.